Hi, Dan with Route 2 Power Sports here with our continued series, educational series on how to select the right components, upgrade parts, replacement parts, spare parts for your power sports vehicles like this pit bike behind me. And today's primer is about tires and inner tubes. And where do we start? Let's start with rubber. So, in talking about tires and inner tubes, let's start at the key point here, rubber and inner tubes. So, there's two basic types of rubber we're going to talk about today. Both of them are synthetic rubber, means man-made, because in the old days we used to use natural rubber that was tapped from a tree, but that's really expensive and bad on the environment, and I think that kind of went out along with Firestone and Model T Fords. I remember Ford actually had a rubber plantation in Brazil, and it was called America. But anyway, I digress. So we're going to talk about two kinds of rubber. There is one which is synthetic rubber, okay? And the other, and I'm going to point out something that you can tell how it is when you look. And then the other is called butyl rubber. Okay, B-U-T-Y-L, butyl rubber. Yeah. Okay, so synthetic rubber is a man-made, synthesized rubber. It's good, it's flexible, it's got pretty good air retention and shock absorption. And it's really easy to make and pretty cheap to make. So lots of factories make synthetic rubber tires. But if you want a superior tire, you choose butyl. And what's better about butyl? So butyl, number one, I'll talk about air retention. If you inflate this tire, it can hold air at least 3 months, even up to 6 months without leaking through the pores of the material, where synthetic rubber will maybe only hold the air a week or less. So better air retention, number one. Also, when it's manufactured, it's a little bit more expensive because it's harder to control. It's more critical in temperature and humidity when the factory is manufacturing, so ends up more expensive, but again, superior material. It's got better air retention, better stretchability, better durability against aging, and also better heat resistance. And inside a tire, especially when you're running at high rates of speed or on a vehicle like this where you're doing all kinds of impacts, they get really, really hot, and butyl rubber will withstand heat better than synthesized rubber. Synthesized rubber will do something called self-vulcanization, which basically means the rubber will become hard and brittle and will break down really quickly. So again, choose butyl. And aside from looking at somebody's listing, how to know what's butyl and what is just regular synthesized rubber, look at this stripe. Yellow stripe, this is a secret I'm giving you guys. Yellow stripe is synthesized rubber, synthetic rubber. Blue stripe is butyl. Blue for butyl. Remember that. Next key point to consider on inner tubes is the valve stem type. You see this one here? This is a straight stainless steel valve stem. This is called a TR4. This one is stainless steel. There's some that are not, but this one is stainless steel. And one of the key points about the TR4 is that it has a pair of lock nuts. And this normally, in a lot of dirt bikes, this will fasten against the rim and then you tighten down a lock nut. So this will keep the stem from shifting. Again, you're hitting a lot of rocks and dips and whatever on the trail. So this will keep your stem in place and won't shift, okay? TR4. Then we have a TR13. This is a very traditional tire stem like you see on most bicycles, even a regular car. It's just all rubber coated, straight valve stem and rubber seat all kind of sealed together, not so rigid, so TR4. Then we have another type which is called a TR87. And I'll point out something here. TR87, if you notice, it's bent. It's angled. And there's actually a whole assortment of angles that you can select. You know, they even have so you go from straight to 15, 30, 60, 90 degree. This one here looks like a 60. And why is it bent? Well, it comes in handy, especially, see this little wheel, little inner tube? This is going to go on a small wheel, which probably has a hub this big, and if it was straight, you wouldn't be able to get at the valve to be able to put air in. So it's pointed out towards you. Makes it much easier to get at to inflate. TR87 type. And generally, good ones are all copper. And the third type is called a TR87. And the valve stem on this is angled. It's pointing, it's bent, basically. It's not straight up. It's pointing out. And that comes in handy, especially for filling, air filling, especially in a small hub like this, where you might have the center axle and brake or something in the way. So this is angled out towards you, the inflator. Okay, on the TR87 type valve, there's a couple of other things I want to point out. Is remember, there's an angle to them. They're not straight, but we have three angles. We have this one, which is a 90 degree. It means from this plane, it's facing out 90 degrees. Let's go this way. 90 degrees, so it's pointing out at you. This bike back here, this little pocket bike, can you see? There's a 90 degree valve right here. And it's handy because if it was a straight valve, you wouldn't be able to get your air pump on there. So pointing out at you. But since this bike still has a little bit of clearance, somebody put a 45. We have a 45 degree angle also available on TR87. So this one's got a 45 and this one's got a 90. And what's a 45 look like? It looks like this one here. So you see the angle is a little bit in towards the plane of the tire, or the straight up and down here. And then lastly, we have a 0 degree, which is parallel, sometimes called a P. Parallel TR87 valve, so it's parallel with the plane of the tire. There are some vehicles, there was some senior mobility scooter I saw earlier today where there was like no clearance, and this is perfect because there was some cover here, and on this side there was like a brake, so parallel, perfect. 0, 45, and 90. When talking about tires, we have two overall categories. The first one is tubed tires that we're going to talk about. So what does tubed mean? It means we have an inner tube inside the outer tire. The tube, inner tube, holds the air, keeps your air pressure, keeps your shape of your tire, supports the outside part, which is the wearing part, the part that grips the road, that needs to last a long time, and there's two parts to it. So why do we need a tube? Well, lots of vehicles, for example, this one, this dirt bike wheel or hub here, has a lot of spokes. So it's virtually impossible to keep this airtight, this tire airtight, because of all these spokes. Unless there are some really expensive, specially made sealers inside around the spokes, but because of all these holes, it's really generally hard to do that. So most bicycles, most motorcycles with spokes like this have inner tubes. Okay? Then, on the other hand, we have tubeless tires, which means no tube. Okay? They're just the outside part. There are advantages to tubeless. First of all, they can be molded in almost any shape and size. They don't have to go around a tube. Second, they can absorb things like, for example, a nail or a screw sometimes can enter the tire and just get stuck there and not affect the ride. It's not going to pop the tube and immediately lose shape. So, for example, back here, this is a solid hub, pretty easy to maintain air pressure there. We don't have a lot of spokes for air to leak out. So this is a tubeless tire. And there is one other type, but this is really not a tubeless tire. This is just a solid tire. It's just solid rubber, and it's used, for example, a lot of hoverboards or maybe kids strollers. It's just solid rubber, but it doesn't give you any of the cushioning performance, shock absorbing performance that you get in a tubed or tubeless tire, just a little because it's rubber. Okay, working our way outwards, we're now to the tires, the outside here, going from inner tubes out to tires. So we have three basic types of tires. There are a lot of like subcategories, but let's talk about the three main categories here. First of all, we talk about road tires, and I'll get into what differentiates the three in a second. This is a road tire. This is an all-terrain tire, and this is an off-road tire. Okay, why do we have these different classes? Well, and what makes them different? This, if you notice the treads, here, let's turn them this way. Tread's different, right? This is more smooth, has some grooves here, some evenly spaced grooves, and these sometimes little lines in between. Cut lines are called sipes. And what we want to do here basically is get as much contact, a contact patch they call it, as much contact with the road surface as possible for good grip and traction. But we still have these grooves to move water out of the way. If you're in the rain, you don't want to hydroplane and end up skidding. So these grooves are to move water out of the way, but try to get as much surface with the road, flat road, as possible. Now, and they're all similar, slightly different tread pattern here, but the same idea, big contact patch. Now, we go to all-terrain. All-terrain is kind of a mix of road and off-road. And so what's different? You still got a good contact patch for when you're on pavement, when you're on the road, but you have much wider grooves. And that's to give you more like teeth to grip in the dirt when you're not on the road. So the wide contact patch again, wider spaced grooves, more teeth for grippiness in the dirt, and some more aggressive patterns, these kind of blocky patterns. Also, you get more of a hard sidewall when you go all-terrain than you have with a road tire. Softer sidewall is for a cushier ride. When you're riding in your car or whatever vehicle on the road, any bumps, it should help even out. So this is a little bit stiffer sidewall. Now going to the last category, notice the treads. Much more aggressive, much bigger gaps, right? We're not even talking about grooves anymore. It's like more like just block treads and no grooves, just big blocks with big spaces. So this is to really grip the mud, the dirt, the dry sand, whatever you're running in, that is not a smooth surface. So it's not about contact patch here. It's more about digging in like you have cleats on for football, or teeth, biting into the dirt. And again, hard sidewalls, very little flex. This is to keep this strong digging into the dirt. And so these are off-road. And then this is like a subcategory here. So this one's really aggressive shape. This one is a mud tire, meant to go in the mud, and might even work as if you're floating in the water, to help propel you through the water. Because sometimes when you're going through mud, you're basically floating. So super aggressive pattern, harder sidewall. In between is the all-terrain, and then back to road is more about gripping and smooth ride. One of the key reference numbers when you're selecting tires that also causes a lot of confusion is aspect ratio. And with motorcycle tires, scooter tires, small vehicle tires like this, a lot of them are not even marked with aspect ratio, so hard to determine. But let's explain what it is anyway. Aspect ratio is the ratio of your tire height from the rim edge to the top here, or bottom, your choice, but the total space from the rim to the top of the tread here, okay, as divided by the total width of the tread. So basically, the lower the number, the lower this is. So for example, if you have a sports car, usually they have really skinny tires, really low to the ground. That's a low aspect ratio tire. And high aspect ratio is like a regular passenger car. It's more cushiony. There's one there, there's one now. So wide aspect ratio or high aspect ratio gives you more comfort and maybe better highway cruising comfort and lower noise. Low aspect ratio gives you a wider patch of contact with the ground, so better grip, better traction, more of a performance tire. So you can look at this one as pretty skinny. It's also really small, but this is more of a low profile tire. Unfortunately, a lot of these small tires, they don't talk about aspect ratio at all, so you just have to kind of do it by eye. Remember, The wider, more cushiony, lower, more grippy, more sporty. Now let's talk about the construction of the actual tires themselves. You guys might have heard, especially if you have a car, you might have heard a radial tire, steel belted tire, bias tire. What does all this stuff mean? Well, basically, all the tires are made of rubber, but they have other stuff thrown in for good measure. Yeah. So, for example, this tire here, let's point out a couple of things. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but we'll do a close-up later. There is a bunch of steel little cords here at the inner rim that goes around the hub, and that's called a bead chaffer, okay? And what that does is it maintains the strength here around the hub so that it doesn't pop off your hub, especially if you're going over, bumps. So this keeps the shape of the tire tight to the hub, and on a tubeless tire, really important, definitely keeps the air in as well. So multiple cords inside of here, we say like 6-strand or 9-strand bead chaffer. Usually more strands, stronger. So big tires on dirt bikes, for example, have a lot of strands in the bead chaffer. Now, second, in the sidewall construction, you might be able to see here, we cut up this tire, you can see some like diagonal sort of pattern. So let's talk about that. They call them plies. Plies. So generally, low-cost tires have 2 plies of what they call bias ply, usually nylon cord. So nylon plastic cord is embedded in the rubber, and it's usually running at 30 to 38% angle from the bead chaffer, so it's like diagonal lines, okay? Then step up from there, you get into steel belted tires. When you go to a tire shop to buy tires for your car, usually you hear this term, steel belted. So what is that? It's the nylon bias plies, like we mentioned, plus 2 more layers of steel cord that's embedded in the tire wall to give it even more strength, more weight capacity, and more flex, okay? Then one more type of tire, which is the most modern, almost every car is running, steel belted radial tires. So radial means that you have those steel belts running at a 90-degree angle from the tread center. So you have the original bias plies going at 38% angle, and then at 90, so it's going, this is your tread center, so you're going directly opposite, 90 degrees, you get a radial ply of steel, additional layer, that increases again your weight capacity, your flexibility capacity. So basically when you're going down the road, more comfortable, better lasting, and better longevity. So finally, with all those things added up, you get your radial tires give you better flex, better weight capacity, better longevity, and finally more grip on the road.